The sun hung low over the Texas horizon like a dying ember, painting the barren landscape in shades of rust and gold. Ethan Cole squinted against the glare, his weathered hand shading eyes that had seen too much death and not enough peace. The leather reins in his other hand were slick with sweat, and his horse, a sturdy bay named Whiskey, snorted in protest at the oppressive heat. It was August 1875, and the drought had turned the Rio Grande Valley into a furnace. What grass remained was brittle as old bones, crackling under Whiskey's hooves with each weary step. Ethan had been riding for 3 days straight, pushing north from Del Rio toward the New Mexico territory, running from memories that clung to him like shadows. The Winchester rifle across his saddle caught the fading light, its barrel worn smooth from years of use. Once, that gun had made him famous or infamous, depending on who was telling the tale. Ethan Cole, fastest draw west of the Pecos. But that was before Sarah, before the night the Dawson gang came calling, seeking revenge for their dead leader, before he'd found his wife's body in their burned cabin, her Sunday dress soaked crimson. 2 years had passed since then, 2 years of drifting like tumbleweed, taking odd jobs riding fence, hunting wolves, anything that didn't require staying in one place long enough for the ghost to catch up. Whiskey's ears pricked forward, and Ethan tensed. After decades in lawless country, he'd learned to trust his horse's instincts more than his own. Through the heat shimmer, he spotted a ribbon of green cottonwoods marking the course of Willow Creek, one of the few waterways that hadn't completely surrendered to the drought. As they descended toward the creek, Ethan heard a sound that didn't belong to the evening chorus of cicadas and coyotes, crying, soft, muffled, but unmistakably human. His hand moved instinctively to the Colt .45 on his hip. Could be a trap. Wouldn't be the first time bandits used a woman's distress to lure travelers. But the crying continued, raw with genuine fear, and something in Ethan's chest tightened. He dismounted, quietly, looping Whiskey's reins around a mesquite branch, moving with the practiced stealth of a man who'd survived by being neither seen nor heard. He pushed through the rustling cottonwood leaves toward the water's edge. What he saw stopped him cold. A young woman huddled on the riverbank, her arms wrapped around her knees, shoulders shaking with sobs. Her dress, once white, now torn and mud-stained, clung to her trembling form. Long auburn hair, unpinned and wild, cascaded over her face like a copper waterfall. She was barefoot, her delicate feet scraped raw, and even from 20 feet away, Ethan could see the bruises blooming purple on her wrists. She hadn't heard him approach. Lost in her misery, she rocked back and forth, whispering prayers between sobs. "Please, Lord, please help me. I can't go back. I won't." Ethan hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to mount up and ride on. He'd sworn off complications, sworn off caring, but the girl, she couldn't be more than 18 or 19, looked so utterly alone, so broken, that something long dormant stirred in his chest. He cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her into the water. The effect was immediate. She jerked upright, eyes wide with terror, scrambling backward until her hands splashed into the shallow creek. Green eyes, bright as spring grass, stared at him from a face that would have been pretty if not for the fear distorting her features. "Easy now," Ethan said, raising both hands to show they were empty. "I ain't gonna hurt you, miss." She pressed herself against a boulder, chest heaving with panicked breaths. "Stay back, please. I don't have anything worth stealing." "Not here to rob you." Ethan kept his voice low, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "Name's Ethan Cole. I was just passing through, heard someone in distress." Those green eyes darted left and right, searching for escape routes, finding none. She lifted her chin with a courage that surprised him. "If you're one of his men, you can tell Silas McGraw I'd rather die than go back." McGraw. Ethan knew the name. Everyone in 3 counties knew it. Cattle baron, owned half of Val Verde County, mean as a rattlesnake and twice as dangerous. What was this slip of a girl doing mixed up with the likes of him? I don't work for McGraw or anyone else. Ethan said. He slowly reached into his saddlebag, pulling out a canteen. You look like you could use some water. She watched suspiciously as he approached, setting the canteen on a flat rock between them before backing away. After a long moment, thirst won over fear. She grabbed the canteen with shaking hands, drinking greedily. Thank you, she whispered, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Up close, Ethan could see she was indeed young, with the kind of innocence that the frontier usually crushed quick. Despite the dirt and tears, there was a refinement to her features, high cheekbones, delicate nose, the bearing of someone raised proper. You got a name? He asked. She hesitated, then lifted her chin again. Mary Whitfield. Well, Miss Whitfield, what's got you out here alone with night coming on? These parts ain't safe for anyone, especially not a young woman. Fresh tears welled in her eyes. I ran away from Eagle Pass. My father, he promised me to Mr. McGraw, said it would save our church, clear the debts, but I've heard things about him. Terrible things. The servants whisper about his first wife, how she died. I won't be sold like cattle. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He'd heard those same whispers about McGraw's first wife. Fell down the stairs, they said. Though everyone knew bruises don't come from falling. How long you been running? 2 days. I thought I could make it to Fort Stockton. Catch a stage somewhere, anywhere. But I got lost, and my horse... She gestured helplessly. Stepped in a prairie dog hole yesterday. Had to leave him. 2 days on foot in this heat with no supplies. It was a miracle she was still standing. Ethan glanced at the darkening sky, then at the shivering girl. The temperature would drop fast once the sun set, and in that thin dress, she'd be in real trouble. He made a decision he knew he'd probably regret. I've got a blanket in my pack, he said, and some jerky and hardtack. It ain't much, but it'll keep you going. Mary's eyes widened. You're helping me. Seems you could use it. He turned back toward whiskey, giving her space. Can't leave you out here for the coyotes. As he rummaged through his saddlebags, he heard her stand, her bare feet whispering across the sandy ground. Mr. Cole, why? Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Ethan paused, his hand on the wool blanket that still smelled faintly of Sarah's lavender soap. Why was he helping her? Maybe because he'd once failed to protect someone who needed it. Maybe because the world had enough McGraws and not enough decent folks. Or maybe he was just a fool who couldn't ride past suffering anymore. Let's just say I've got a problem with men who think they can buy and sell people, he said finally. He turned, holding out the blanket. Here, you're shaking like a leaf. She reached for it, and their fingers brushed briefly. Her skin was ice cold despite the lingering heat. Without thinking, Ethan stepped closer, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders, his large hands gentle as he tucked it secure. There now, he murmured. That's better. Mary looked up at him, and for a moment, something passed between them, not attraction, not yet, but recognition. Two lost souls who'd found each other in the wilderness. He'll come after me, she whispered. McGraw doesn't like being denied what he thinks is his. Let him come. The words came out harder than Ethan intended, echoing the man he used to be. He softened his tone. First things first, we need to get you somewhere safe for the night. There's a grove about a mile upstream, good shelter and hidden from the trail. Can you ride? Yes, my father made sure I could. Said a minister's daughter should be able to visit the sick in the far homesteads. Good. You'll ride whiskey. I'll walk. But... No arguments. Miss, you can barely stand as it is. As if to prove his point. Mary swayed on her feet. Ethan steadied her with a hand on her elbow, noted how she flinched at even that gentle touch. What had she endured in her father's house that made McGraw seem the worse option? He helped her mount Whiskey, who stood patient as a saint despite the unfamiliar rider. Mary arranged her torn skirts as modestly as possible, wincing as she settled into the saddle. "I'm sorry," she said softly, as Ethan took the reins to lead them, "for bringing trouble your way. You should just point me toward Fort Stockton and ride on." Ethan looked back at her small, brave, shivering despite the blanket, and felt that dangerous stirring in his chest again. "Miss Whitfield, I've been riding away from things for 2 years now. Maybe it's time I rode towards something for a change." The last sliver of sun disappeared behind the mountains, and the first stars began to pierce the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, answered by another, then another, until the night filled with their wild chorus. Ethan led Whiskey upstream, his boots crunching on the gravelly shore, while Mary held tight to the saddle horn. Neither spoke, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the quiet of two people who understood that some wounds went too deep for words. As they walked, Ethan found himself planning. Fort Stockton was 3 days' ride, but McGraw would have men watching the stage stations. El Paso was possible, but that meant crossing some of the meanest country in Texas, maybe north toward New Mexico territory. The law was thinner there, but so was McGraw's reach. He glanced back at Mary, who'd stopped shivering and sat straighter in the saddle. There was steel in her spine, hidden beneath that proper upbringing. She'd need it for what was coming. Because Ethan Cole knew, with the certainty of a man who'd lived by the gun, that Silas McGraw wouldn't let this insult stand. The man would come, bringing hired guns and hell with him. And when he did, Ethan would be ready. For the first time in 2 years, he had something worth fighting for. The campfire crackled softly in the hidden grove, casting dancing shadows across the canyon walls. Mary sat wrapped in Ethan's blanket, her bare feet tucked beneath her torn dress, watching him tend the small flame with practiced efficiency. They'd been traveling together for 3 days now, and she still couldn't quite believe this gruff stranger had taken her under his protection. "You should eat more," Ethan said, offering her another piece of jerky. "Need to keep your strength up." Mary took it reluctantly. The dried meat was tough as leather, nothing like the delicate meals she'd known in her father's house. But she was learning that survival on the frontier meant swallowing pride along with whatever sustenance came your way. "Mr. Cole," she began, then hesitated. "May I ask you something?" He nodded, poking at the fire with a stick. The orange light carved deep lines in his weathered face, and Mary wondered what sorrows had etched them there. "Why don't you ask questions about me, about what I'm running from?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes fixed on the flames. "Figure a person's entitled to their secrets. You'll tell me what you need to, when you're ready. My father would say secrets are sins hiding from the Lord's light. Your father, a preacher, Presbyterian minister, came to Eagle Pass 8 years ago to bring God's word to the frontier." Mary pulled the blanket tighter. "He's a good man, truly, just desperate. The church has debts. You see, the congregation is small, mostly poor farmers and Mexican families. When Mr. McGraw offered to pay everything off in exchange for—" She couldn't finish. "In exchange for you. Father said it was God's will. That marriage was a woman's duty, and I should be grateful such a wealthy man wanted me." Her voice turned bitter. "He wouldn't listen when I told him about the rumors, about Mrs. Catherine McGraw and her accident, about the servant girls who disappeared from the McGraw ranch." Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd known men like McGraw all his life, men who thought money gave them the right to own people body and soul. "How old are you?" "Mary, 18 last month." She saw him wince and added quickly, "I know I seem younger. Father kept me sheltered, said the world was too wicked for innocent eyes." Maybe he was right about that much. They fell silent again. In the distance, an owl hooted, and Mary shivered despite the fire's warmth. She studied Ethan's profile, trying to reconcile the gentle way he'd cared for her with the deadly precision she'd glimpsed when he checked his weapons each morning. "What about you?" she asked softly. "What are you running from?" His hand stilled on the stick. "What makes you think I'm running?" "The way you look over your shoulder, how you choose camps with their backs protected. You're kind to me, Mr. Cole. But there's something broken in your eyes. I've seen it in the mirror these past months." Ethan looked at her then. Really looked. And Mary felt her breath catch. Behind his careful control lay a grief so deep it seemed bottomless. "Had a wife once," he said finally, his voice rough. "Sarah, prettiest girl in Amarillo. Could have had any man she wanted. Lord knows why she chose a gunfighter with more notches on his pistol than sense." Mary waited, sensing the weight of untold words. "I tried to change for her, hung up my guns, bought a little spread outside town. We were going to raise horses, maybe children someday. We're happy for 3 years. He stirred the fire again, sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. "But the past has a way of finding you. The Dawson gang came calling one night while I was in town buying supplies. By the time I got back—" "I'm sorry," Mary whispered, understanding now the source of those deep lines, the careful distance he maintained. "Sarah used to say I wrapped myself in winter, kept people at arm's length. She was the only one who could thaw me out." He gave a humorless laugh. "After she died, the winter came back twice as hard. Been riding through it ever since." "Until you found me by the river. You were shivering," he said simply. "Couldn't ride past that." Mary felt tears prick her eyes. This hard man who'd lost everything still had enough warmth left to wrap a stranger in his protection. "She must have loved you very much." "Sarah loved everyone, even me." Ethan stood abruptly, checking the perimeter of their camp. "We should turn in. Want to reach Bitter Springs by tomorrow night." Mary recognized the deflection but didn't push. She was learning that Ethan Cole parceled out pieces of himself like a miser with gold coins rarely and with great reluctance. As she settled into her bedroll, another gift from his seemingly endless supplies, Mary watched him take first watch, his silhouette dark against the starfield. She'd never met anyone like him. The men in Eagle Pass fell into 2 categories, those like her father, who hid from life behind scripture and propriety, and those like McGraw, who took what they wanted with brutal hands. Ethan was neither. He was gentle without being weak, strong without being cruel. He'd killed men she'd seen the notches on his gun handle, yet he'd wrapped her in his blanket with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "Mr. Cole," she called softly. "Just Ethan is fine." Ethan. The name felt strange on her tongue, too intimate. "Do you think God forgives us for running away?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, I think God understands that sometimes running is the only way to survive. And surviving isn't a sin. Mary, it's what we're built to do." She closed her eyes, letting his words wrap around her like another blanket. For the first time since fleeing her father's house, she felt something other than fear and guilt. It might have been hope. In the depths of night, Mary woke to find Ethan sitting closer to her bedroll, his rifle across his knees. His head was tilted, listening to something she couldn't hear. "What is it?" she whispered. "Maybe nothing. Thought I heard horses earlier. Go back to sleep." But she couldn't. Every sound, the rustle of wind through cottonwood leaves, the distant yip of coyotes made her heart race. "They're coming. Aren't they McGraw's men?" "Eventually. Man like that doesn't take rejection well." "I'm putting you in danger. I should go." "You should stay right where you are." His voice brooked no argument. "I've faced worse than hired guns, Mary, and I've got something now I didn't have before." "What's that?" He glanced at her, and in the moonlight, she caught the ghost of a smile. "Something worth protecting." The words sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, hiding her flushed cheeks. "I don't understand you, Ethan Cole." "Nothing to understand. I'm just a man who's tired of losing things." "I'm not yours to lose." "No," he agreed quietly. "You're not mine at all, but that doesn't mean I'll let them take you." Mary studied his profile in the darkness, the strong jaw, the weathered lines, the eyes that had seen too much. He was handsome in a hard way, like the landscape itself. More than that, he was the first person in her life who'd given her a choice. "Tell me about Sarah," she said impulsively. "Not how she died, how she lived." Ethan shifted, his expression softening. She sang while she cooked, hymns, mostly. But sometimes these old Irish ballads her grandmother taught her had a voice like honey and whiskey mixed together. He smiled at the memory. Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but she didn't care. Said life was too short to worry about perfect pitch. "She sounds wonderful." She was too wonderful for this hard country. I used to tell her that, and she'd laugh. Said the frontier needed more wonder, not less. His smile faded. Maybe if I'd listened, taken her back east like she sometimes talked about. "You can't live in maybes," Mary said, repeating something her mother used to say before the fever took her. "They'll eat you alive from the inside." "Smart woman, your mother." Father was different when she was alive. Softer. After she passed, it was like he turned to stone, started seeing sin everywhere, preaching about punishment instead of love. Mary plucked at a loose thread on the blanket. "I think he blamed himself for not praying hard enough to save her. Maybe that's why he was so eager to give me to McGraw, thought it might earn God's forgiveness." "That's not how forgiveness works." "Now how does it work, then?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Sarah used to say forgiveness was like water in the desert. You can't earn it or force it. It just comes when it comes. And all you can do is be grateful when it does." "Have you forgiven yourself for not being there?" His laugh was sharp as broken glass. "No, but I'm working on it." They sat in companionable silence until the eastern sky began to lighten, as dawn painted the canyon walls pink and gold. Mary felt something shift between them. The careful distance Ethan maintained had narrowed, just a fraction. She could see it in the way he handed her the canteen without being asked, the way he helped her to her feet with a touch that lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary. "We'll reach Bitter Springs by nightfall," he said, saddling whiskey. "There's a woman there, Mrs. Chen, runs a boarding house. She'll help you get some proper clothes, maybe even shoes that fit." Mary looked down at her battered feet, now wrapped in strips torn from her petticoat. "And then we keep moving. North, maybe. New Mexico territory's got plenty of places a person can disappear." The word slipped out before she could stop it. Ethan paused in checking the saddle cinch. "Unless you've got other plans." "No, I don't want to presume. You've already done so much." He turned to face her fully, and Mary saw something in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. "I told you, Mary, I'm tired of riding away from things. Maybe it's time I rode towards something instead. Even if that something brings trouble. Especially then." He helped her mount whiskey, his hands steady on her waist. "Besides, I've got a feeling you're worth the trouble." As they set out into the rising sun, Mary allowed herself a small smile. She was still running, still afraid, but for the first time, she wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, that made all the difference. Behind them, lost in the morning shadows, a rider watched their departure before wheeling his horse around and galloping south. By noon, Silas McGraw would know exactly where his runaway bride had gone, and with whom. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a sea of sand and scrub brush baking under the merciless sun. Mary squinted against the glare, grateful for the wide-brimmed hat Mrs. Chen had given her in Bitter Springs. It had been 3 days since they'd left the boarding house, 3 days of hard riding toward the New Mexico border, and she was beginning to understand why Ethan had insisted on teaching her the basics of frontier survival. "See that?" Ethan pointed to a dark smudge on the horizon. "Dust cloud. Riders coming fast." Mary's heart jumped. McGraw's men. Could be. Could be anyone. He guided Whiskey off the main trail, heading for a cluster of red rocks. "First rule out here, assume trouble until proven otherwise." They took shelter behind the largest boulder, Ethan positioning himself between Mary and the approaching danger. She watched him check his rifle with practiced movements, noted how his whole demeanor shifted from protector to predator. "If shooting starts, you take Whiskey and ride hard for those hills," he instructed, pointing north. "Don't look back. Don't stop for anything." "I'm not leaving you." "You will if I tell you to." His gray eyes were steel. "Promise me, Mary." Before she could answer, the dust cloud resolved into 5 riders, moving with the purposeful speed of men on a mission. But as they passed, Mary saw they wore cavalry uniforms, not the rough clothes of hired guns. "Soldiers," she breathed in relief. "Apache trouble, most likely," Ethan said. But he didn't relax his vigilance until the troops were well past. "They've been hitting settlements along the border. Another reason to keep moving." As they resumed their journey, Mary found herself studying Ethan's back, the way he sat his horse with easy grace despite the punishing heat. These past days had been a revelation. He'd taught her to read tracks, to find water in seemingly barren land, to load and shoot his spare revolver. "Why are you teaching me all this?" she'd asked that first evening. "Because depending on others to keep you safe is a luxury the frontier doesn't allow," he'd replied, "even depending on me." Now, watching him navigate the treacherous landscape with unconscious skill, Mary understood. He was preparing her for the possibility that she might have to survive without him. The thought sent an unexpected pang through her chest. "Ethan," she called, "tell me about New Mexico." "It's different from Texas. Higher country, mountains that touch the sky, snow in winter. Good place to start over, if a person's so inclined." "Is that what you're planning, starting over?" He glanced back at her, and she caught something unguarded in his expression. "Maybe. Been running long enough. Might be time to try standing still." They made camp that night in a box canyon, its high walls offering protection from prying eyes. As Mary practiced loading the revolver by firelight, she noticed Ethan watching her with an odd expression. "What?" she asked, fumbling with the cartridges. "Nothing, just—" "You're different than you were a week ago." "How so?" "Stronger. That scared girl I found by the river, she's still there. But there's steel underneath now." He smiled slightly. "Sarah would have liked you." Mary felt warmth bloom in her chest at the comparison. "I wish I could have met her. You two would have been thick as thieves." She had a way of bringing out the best in people, making them braver than they thought they could be. He poked at the fire. "You remind me of her sometimes. Not in looks, but in spirit. That quiet strength that bends but doesn't break." "I don't feel strong," Mary admitted. "Most days I'm terrified." "Being scared doesn't mean you're not strong. Means you're smart enough to recognize danger." Ethan moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could smell leather and gunpowder and something uniquely him. "But you don't let the fear stop you. That's what courage really is." Mary looked up at him, struck by how the firelight softened his harsh features. Without thinking, she reached out and touched a scar on his jaw she'd noticed but never asked about. "How did you get this?" He went very still under her touch. "Knife fight in Tombstone. Man thought I'd cheated at cards." "Had you—" "No, I was just better at reading people than he was." His voice had gone rough. "Mary—" "I know," she whispered, dropping her hand. "I'm too young, too innocent. You still see your wife when you look at me. I know all the reasons this is impossible." "Do you?" He caught her hand before she could pull away completely. "Because I keep finding new ones every day. And none of them seem to matter when you look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm worth saving. The air between them crackled with tension. Mary's heart hammered against her ribs as Ethan's thumb traced circles on her wrist. She'd never felt anything like this pull, this need that defied every proper teaching of her sheltered life. I should check the perimeter, Ethan said abruptly, releasing her hand and standing. Get some rest. We've got hard riding tomorrow. Mary watched him disappear into the darkness, frustration and longing warring in her chest. She understood his caution, even respected it. He was trying to protect her reputation, her innocence, perhaps even her heart. But didn't she get a say in what she wanted to protect? The next morning brought new challenges. A sandstorm swept in from the west, forcing them to take shelter in a shallow cave. They huddled together as the wind howled outside, sharing water and waiting for nature's fury to pass. "I hate this," Mary muttered, spitting out grit. "The sand gets everywhere." "Welcome to the desert," Ethan said dryly. "It's not kind to anyone, especially not ladies raised in proper houses. I'm not a lady anymore. Ladies don't run away from home, don't sleep under stars, don't learn to shoot guns. Sure they do. They just don't admit it in polite company." He adjusted the bandana covering her nose and mouth. "You're more of a lady now than you ever were in Eagle Pass. How do you figure? Because now you're choosing who you want to be, instead of letting others choose for you. That takes real class." The storm passed by afternoon, leaving them to dig out their gear and continue on. As they rode, Mary practiced the skills Ethan had taught her, reading the landscape, watching for danger signs, conserving water. She was so focused on a suspicious circling of buzzards that she almost missed Ethan's sudden tension. "What is?" she started, then saw what had caught his attention. 3 riders blocked the trail ahead. Unlike the soldiers, these men had the hard look of those who lived outside the law. Their leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, smiled without warmth. Well, Ethan Cole, heard you were back in the game." "Rodriguez." Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. "Didn't know you were working this territory." "Times change. Man's gotta make a living." Rodriguez's gaze slid to Mary, and she fought the urge to shrink back. "That's some valuable cargo you're hauling." "The lady's not cargo. No word is Silas McGraw's offering $1,000 for her return. That's a lot of money for a man in my line of work." Mary felt ice in her veins. $1,000 more than most men saw in 5 years. Enough to turn even decent folk into bounty hunters. "The lady's with me," Ethan said quietly. "That should be enough for you to ride on." Rodriguez laughed. "Now, your reputation doesn't scare me. Cole, you've been out of the game too long, gotten soft." "Have I?" Ethan's hand rested casually on his gun. "You willing to bet your life on that?" The tension stretched taut as wire. Mary could barely breathe. She'd seen Ethan practice, knew his speed, but 3 against 1. "Tell you what," Rodriguez said finally. "For old time's sake, I'll make you a deal. Give us the girl, right away. Nobody has to die today." "Counteroffer," Ethan replied. "You and your boys turn around. Forget you saw us. Nobody has to die today." One of Rodriguez's men, young and jumpy, went for his gun. What happened next was too fast for Mary to fully follow. Ethan drew and fired in one fluid motion, his bullet catching the young gun's weapon and sending it spinning. Before the others could react, he had his rifle out, covering all 3. "Like I said," Ethan's voice was deadly calm. "Nobody has to die today. Your choice, Rodriguez." The bandit leader raised his hand slowly, his smile now genuine. "Still fast as lightning. Should have listened to the stories." He gestured to his men. "We're leaving, boys. There's easier money to be made." As they rode away, the young gunman cradling his injured hand, Rodriguez called back, "Watch yourself. Cole, McGraw's got half of Texas looking for that girl. You can't outdraw them all. When they were gone, Mary realized she was shaking. You could have killed him. Could have. Didn't need to. Despite what people say, I never liked killing. It just seemed to find me anyway. Ethan holstered his weapons. You all right?
Yes, no, I don't know.
She pressed her hands to her face.
$1,000. Ethan, McGraw must truly hate being denied.
It's not about you. It's about power, control. Men like McGraw can't stand losing either. He guided Whiskey closer, reaching out to squeeze her shoulder. But Rodriguez was wrong about one thing. I can't outdraw them all. But I'll damn sure try if it comes to that. Why? The question burst out of her. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because I've spent 2 years feeling nothing but cold. Then I found you by that river, shivering and afraid, but still fighting. And something inside me thawed. Maybe I'm selfish, Mary, but I'm not ready to go back to the cold. Not yet. Mary felt tears sting her eyes, without overthinking it. She leaned across the gap between their horses and kissed his cheek, quick and light as a butterfly. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan touched the spot her lips had brushed, looking stunned. Then his expression softened into something that made her heart race. Come on, let's find somewhere safe to camp. I've got a feeling our troubles are just beginning. As they rode on, Mary couldn't shake Rodriguez's warning. Half of Texas looking for her. How long before their luck ran out? How long before Ethan paid the ultimate price for his protection? She straightened in the saddle, decision crystallizing. She wouldn't be a burden, wouldn't be the helpless girl who needed constant saving. Ethan was teaching her to survive, and by God, she'd learn. Whatever came next, she'd face it as his equal, not his responsibility. The sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere behind them, danger gathered like storm clouds. But for now, in this moment, they rode together toward an uncertain future, two souls finding warmth in each other against the cold vastness of the frontier. And despite everything, Mary couldn't bring herself to regret a single choice that had brought her here. The town of Redemption Creek squatted on the edge of nowhere like a buzzard waiting for something to die. One main street, a handful of weathered buildings, and enough dust to choke a man. It wasn't much, but it had what Ethan needed: supplies and anonymity. Keep your head down and stay close, he murmured as they rode in. We'll get what we need and get out. Mary nodded, pulling her hat low. She'd traded her torn white dress for men's clothing bought from a traveling merchant: rough canvas pants, cotton shirt, leather vest. With her hair pinned up and hidden, she could almost pass for a young man. Almost. The general store smelled of pickle brine and tobacco, while Ethan haggled with the proprietor over ammunition and provisions. Mary browsed the shelves, marveling at luxuries she'd taken for granted weeks ago. Soap, sugar, a simple hair comb. Pretty thing like you shouldn't be dressed like a saddle tramp. Mary froze. The voice behind her was cultured, with an undertone that made her skin crawl. She turned slowly to find a well-dressed man studying her with calculating eyes. I beg your pardon. No need to pretend. My dear, I'd recognize quality anywhere, regardless of the packaging. He stepped closer, and Mary caught the scent of expensive cologne over whiskey. James Garrett, at your service. I represent certain interests that might benefit a young lady in difficult circumstances. I'm not in any circumstances. Sir, if you'll excuse me. He caught her arm as she tried to pass. Come now, no need for theatrics. Word travels fast out here. Young woman, auburn hair, traveling with a gunman. Certain parties are very eager to see you safely returned home. Mary's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. You're mistaken. I'm nobody special. Worth $1,000 says otherwise. Garrett's grip tightened. Be sensible, my dear. Whatever hold this outlaw has on you, The cold press of steel against Garrett's neck cut him off mid-sentence.
"The lady said you're mistaken."
Ethan's voice was soft as silk and twice as dangerous. I'd take her word for it. Garrett released Mary's arm, raising both hands slowly. "No need for violence, friend. Simply conducting business. Your business is done. Time to move along." "Of course. Though you might want to know McGraw's raised the bounty. 2,000 now. That kind of money brings out the worst in people." Garrett straightened his coat. "You can't protect her forever. Cole, not from what's coming." After he left, Mary found herself shaking. Ethan guided her out the back way, where whiskey waited with their supplies already loaded.
2,000?
She whispered as they rode out of town. "Ethan, we have to keep moving, that's all." But as they climbed into the rough country beyond Redemption Creek, Mary could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand never strayed far from his gun. He was worried, though he'd never admit it. They made camp that night in a grove of juniper trees, the aromatic wood masking their smoke. Mary had gotten efficient at the routine gathering kindling, laying out bedrolls, checking sight lines while Ethan tended the horses. "You did good back there," he said over their meager supper of beans and hardtack. "Kept your head, didn't panic." "I was terrified. Didn't show it. That's what matters." He studied her across the fire. Most women would have fallen apart by now. Hell, most men too. "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed quietly. "You're not." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. The firelight caught the angles of his face, and she saw past the gunfighter's mask to the man underneath, tired, haunted, but looking at her with such warmth it took her breath away. "Ethan, we should turn in early. Want to reach the mining camps by—" His words cut off as a branch snapped in the darkness. In one fluid motion, he was on his feet, gun drawn. Mary grabbed the loaded revolver he'd given her, heart pounding. Well, looks like we found them. Boys." Men materialized from the shadows, 5, 6, maybe more. Their leader stepped into the firelight, and Mary's blood ran cold. She knew that face from wanted posters. "Jack Dawson," Ethan said flatly. "Thought you were dead." "Takes more than a bullet to kill a Dawson." The outlaw's scarred face twisted into a grin. "You should know you killed enough of us. My brother, my cousins, and of course, there was what we did to your pretty wife in return." Ethan went very still. "Ancient history, Jack." "Not so ancient. Not when I hear Ethan Cole's taken up with another woman. Seems only fitting I finish what my boy started 2 years ago." Dawson's eyes found Mary. "She's prettier than the last one. Younger, too. This ought to be fun." "Let her go. Jack, this is between you and me." "Everything became between you and me the day you gunned down my brother." Dawson nodded to his men. "Take them." The grove erupted in chaos. Ethan's gun roared, dropping 2 men before they could clear leather. Mary fired at a figure rushing toward her, the revolver bucking in her hands. She missed, but it made him dive for cover. "The horses!" Ethan shouted, laying down covering fire. Mary ran for whiskey, but rough hands grabbed her from behind. She fought wildly, remembering Ethan's lessons: go for the eyes, the throat, anywhere soft. Her elbow connected with something that crunched, earning a howl of pain. "Feisty little thing!" Her attacker backhanded her, sending her sprawling, through the stars exploding across her vision. Mary saw Ethan struggling with 3 men. He fought like a demon, but the numbers were against him. A rifle butt to the back of his head dropped him to his knees. "No!" Mary tried to crawl toward him, tasting blood. "Tie them up," Dawson ordered. "We'll take our time with this. Cole's got a debt to pay, and I aim to collect every cent." Rough rope bit into Mary's wrists as they bound her to a tree. Across the clearing, they did the same to Ethan, though he was barely conscious, blood running down his face. "Now then," Dawson knelt beside Mary, running a dirty finger down her cheek. Let's discuss exactly how you're going to pay for your man's sins. Get away from her. Ethan's voice was thick but deadly. He speaks good. I want you awake for this. Dawson stood, drawing his knife. You know, Cole, I could just shoot you both and collect McGraw's bounty. But where's the satisfaction in that you took everything from me? Only fair I return the favor. Please. Mary found her voice. Whatever happened, I had nothing to do with it. Let him go, and I'll come willingly. McGraw wants me alive. McGraw can wait. This is personal. Dawson tested his blade on his thumb. Tell me, Cole, should I start with her face? Your wife begged so pretty at the end. Let's see if this one does too. Something snapped in Ethan's eyes. With a roar of pure rage, he surged against his bonds. The rope, hastily tied, gave way. He rolled aside as Dawson's men opened fire, splinters exploding from the tree where he'd been. What followed was brutal and quick. Ethan fought with the fury of a man with nothing left to lose, using everything: fists, feet, rocks, a dropped knife. Mary watched in horrified awe as the civilized man she'd come to know vanished, replaced by the legendary gunfighter who'd terrorized the frontier. When the dust settled, 4 men lay still. The survivors had fled into the night, including Dawson, who'd taken a bullet in the shoulder. Ethan stumbled to Mary, cutting her bonds with shaking hands. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm all right. She caught his face between her palms, forcing him to focus on her. Ethan, I'm all right. He pulled her against him, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking and realized with shock that he was crying silent, body-racking sobs of a man releasing years of pent-up grief and rage. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. God, Mary, I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect her, and I almost couldn't protect you. But you did. She pulled back to look at him. You did protect me. I'm here. I'm safe. For how long? Dawson's right, I've got too many ghosts. They'll keep coming. And one day, I won't be fast enough, strong enough. Mary silenced him with a kiss. Not the butterfly touch from before, but something desperate and fierce. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she kept her forehead pressed to his. Then teach me to fight them with you. Stop trying to protect me and start trusting me. I'm not Sarah. Ethan, I'm not going to wait at home while you face danger alone. Whatever comes, we face it together. He searched her eyes, and she saw the moment he understood. She wasn't the innocent girl he'd found by the river anymore. The frontier had changed her, hardened her, shown her who she really was beneath the minister's daughter facade. Together, he agreed roughly. They didn't sleep that night, taking turns on watch while tending their wounds. As dawn broke, Ethan gathered what supplies survived the fight. Dawson will be back, he said, with more men. I know. McGraw's probably got professional bounty hunters on our trail by now. I know. He looked at her, something between exasperation and admiration in his eyes. You could still run, head east, lose yourself in a big city, without me slowing you down. Ethan Cole. If you suggest abandoning you one more time, I'll shoot you myself. Mary checked her revolver with newfound confidence. You're stuck with me now. Besides, someone needs to watch your back. Despite everything, he smiled. Yes, ma'am. As they rode out, leaving the blood-soaked grove behind, Mary felt the last of her innocence slip away like morning mist. She'd killed a man, or tried to. She'd been beaten, terrorized, nearly violated. By all rights, she should be broken. Instead, she felt stronger than ever. The minister's daughter was gone, but in her place stood a woman of the frontier, tough, capable, and fiercely protective of the man who'd taught her to survive. Somewhere ahead, McGraw waited with his money and power. Behind them. Dawson nursed his wounds and his hate. The odds were impossible. Mary found she didn't care. She glanced at Ethan riding beside her, noted the determined set of his jaw, the protective way he positioned himself between her and potential danger. He'd shown her his darkness last night, the violence he was capable of, the demons that haunted him. She loved him more for it. The thought should have shocked her. Nice girls didn't fall in love with gunfighters. But then, nice girls didn't shoot at outlaws or sleep under the stars or find freedom in the lawless wilderness. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, catching her stare. "That I'm exactly where I want to be." He reached across the space between their horses, taking her hand. His thumb traced over her knuckles, now calloused from reins and rope. "So am I," he said simply. And despite the danger closing in from all sides, Mary believed him. The river ran low and sluggish, its waters dark with silt from the recent rains. They'd been riding hard for 2 days since the attack, pushing deeper into the rough country where civilization was just a memory. Now, as twilight painted the sky purple and gold, they'd stopped at this bend in the river, the same river where their journey had begun. Though miles upstream, Mary slid from Whiskey's back, her legs trembling with exhaustion. Every muscle ached, and the bruise on her cheek from the outlaw's blow had deepened to purple-black. She knelt by the water's edge, cupping the cool liquid in her palms, trying to wash away the grit and fear of the past days. "We'll rest here tonight," Ethan said, already working to unsaddle the horses. "Good sightlines, fresh water. We both need it." She watched him work, noting the stiffness in his movements, the way he favored his left side where a knife had found its mark during the fight. He'd stitched it himself with steady hands while she kept watch, never making a sound despite the obvious pain. "You're hurt worse than you're letting on," she said. "I've had worse." "That's not the point." Mary stood, hands on her hips. "You keep acting like you're made of iron, but you're not. You're flesh and blood, and you need to rest properly or that wound will fester." He paused in his work, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Yes, ma'am, though I seem to recall someone riding with a split lip and bruised ribs without a word of complaint." "That's different." "How?" Mary opened her mouth, then closed it. How could she explain that his pain hurt her more than her own, that watching him suffer in stoic silence was worse than any physical blow? "Just let me help, please." Something in her voice must have reached him. He nodded, lowering himself carefully onto a fallen log while she took over the horses. The simple domesticity of it, caring for the animals while he rested, felt like a glimpse of a future that might never be. Later, as darkness settled over their camp, Mary heated water and insisted on checking his wound. He sat still as she peeled back the makeshift bandage, her fingers gentle despite her lack of medical training. "My mother taught me a little about healing," she said, cleaning the angry red gash. "Before she died, said every woman should know how to tend wounds, birth babies, and ease pain." Smart woman. I think she knew my father would need someone to take care of him after she was gone. She just didn't expect him to become so— Mary searched for the word. "Cold." Grief does that to people, makes them build walls to keep the hurt out. "Is that what you did after Sarah?" His jaw tightened. "I tried, then I found you by the river." Mary's hand stilled on the bandage. The firelight danced between them, and the night sounds of the desert seemed to fade away. She was acutely aware of his skin under her fingers, the rise and fall of his breath, the way his eyes had gone dark as he watched her. "I was so scared that night," she whispered. "Lost, alone, certain I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then you appeared like something out of a story, this dangerous man who wrapped me in his blanket and made me feel safe for the first time in months." "Mary." "No, let me say this." She tied off the fresh bandage, but didn't move away. "I know you think you're protecting me by keeping distance between us. I know you see Sarah when you look at me sometimes, and it hurts you, but I need you to see me, Ethan, really see me." He reached up, his calloused hand cupping her injured cheek with infinite tenderness. "I do see you. That's the problem. I see how young you are, how much life you have ahead of you. You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want you." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Mary held her breath, watching emotions war across his face: desire, doubt, fear, hope. "You don't know what you're asking," he said roughly. "I'm a killer. Mary, I've got blood on my hands that won't wash clean. Men like Dawson will keep coming. Is that the life you want?" "The life I want is one where I make my own choices, where I'm not sold to the highest bidder or locked in a cage of others' expectations." She covered his hand with hers. "You gave me that life. You taught me to fight for it. Don't you dare try to take it away now because you think you know what's best for me." "Stubborn woman," he muttered, but his thumb was stroking her cheekbone. "Stubborn man?" she countered. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Ethan tugged her closer, and she went willingly. Settling beside him on the log, his arm came around her, and she let her head rest against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. "Tell me about the future," she said softly. "If we make it through this, what then?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, there's a valley I know, up near Taos. Good water, grass for horses, mountains all around like walls. A man could build something there, something lasting. A ranch. Maybe. Small place, nothing fancy. Few head of cattle, some horses, kitchen garden." His voice had taken on a dreamy quality. Adobe house with thick walls to keep cool in summer, warm in winter. Big fireplace for the cold nights. "It sounds perfect." "Sarah used to say." He stopped abruptly. "It's okay," Mary said. "She was part of your life. You loved her. That doesn't bother me. Ethan, I'd think less of you if you forgot her." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "How'd you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire die down to embers. Mary felt herself drifting, safe in the circle of his arm despite the dangers that hunted them. This was what she'd been looking for. She realized, not just escape from an unwanted marriage, but this partnership, understanding, love. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it settled into her chest like coming home. "Mary," Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper, "I need you to know something. If anything happens..." "Nothing's going to happen." "Listen to me." He turned her to face him, his expression serious. "If something happens to me, there's money hidden in my saddlebags. Enough to get you to San Francisco. Start over. There's a woman there, Mrs. Eleanor Park. She runs a boarding house for women, asks no questions. Tell her I sent you." Mary silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her frustration and fear and love into the contact. When she pulled back, they were both breathing unsteadily. "Stop planning for me to lose you," she said fiercely. "Start planning for us to win." He looked at her like she was a miracle, this proper minister's daughter who'd become a frontier fighter. Together. Always together. This time when he kissed her, it was different. Slower, deeper, full of promise and passion carefully controlled. Mary felt heat bloom through her body, wants and needs she'd only glimpsed before now burning bright. His hands tangled in her hair, and she made a soft sound that seemed to break his control. He pulled back abruptly, chest heaving. I should check the perimeter." Mary caught his hand before he could stand. "Stay, please. I'm not asking for... Just stay with me." Understanding softened his features. He settled back beside her, pulling her close again. They lay down by the dying fire, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her ear. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. His arms tightened around her. "Mary, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens tomorrow or the next day or the day after that, I wanted you to know that someone loves you, not for who you were or who you might be, but for exactly who you are right now. She felt him shudder, felt the wetness on her hair that might have been tears. When he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. I love you too. God help me. I tried not to, but I love you more than I thought I could love anyone again. Mary lifted her head to look at him, seeing the truth of it in his eyes. Then stop trying to protect me from yourself. Let me love you back. They held each other through the night, not as lovers, not yet, but as two souls who'd found their match in the unlikely wilderness. Around them, the desert sang its ancient song of survival and loss, beauty and danger intertwined. As dawn approached, painting the sky in soft pastels, Mary stirred in Ethan's arms. The river murmured nearby, no longer the place of fear where he'd found her, but a symbol of how far they'd come. We should move, Ethan said reluctantly. McGraw's men could be close. I know. But she didn't pull away immediately, savoring this moment of peace. Ethan, that valley you mentioned, near Taos. What about it? When this is over, let's go there. Build that adobe house. Make a life. She met his eyes. A real life. Not just surviving, but living. He touched her face with wonder, as if still amazed she was real. You'd want that with me? With you, yes, only with you. They broke camp as the sun crested the mountains, but something had fundamentally changed between them. The careful distance was gone, replaced by touches that lingered, glances that spoke volumes. They moved as partners now, each anticipating the other's needs. As they rode north toward an uncertain future, Mary felt no fear. Whatever came McGraw, Dawson, all the ghosts of the past, they'd face it as one. She'd found love in the most unlikely place, with the most unlikely man, and she'd fight to keep it with every breath in her body. Behind them, the river continued its eternal flow, carrying away the last traces of the frightened girl who'd huddled on its banks. In her place rode a woman fierce, determined, and completely, irrevocably in love. The canyon narrowed ahead, red rock walls rising like the gates of hell. Ethan pulled Whiskey to a halt, every instinct screaming danger. The morning sun cast long shadows, perfect for hiding gunmen. What is it? Mary whispered, her hand moving to the revolver at her hip. Too quiet. Birds stopped singing. He scanned the ridgeline. Stay close to the wall when we... The shot came from above, spanging off the rocks inches from his head. Then the canyon erupted in gunfire. "Suffer right," Ethan shouted, spurring Whiskey forward. They galloped through a deadly gauntlet, bullets whining past like angry wasps. Mary bent low over her horse's neck. They'd found her a sturdy paint mare in the last town, returning fire when she could. Her aim had improved considerably, and she saw one attacker tumble from his perch. They burst from the canyon into open ground, but riders were already closing in from both sides. Ethan counted at least a dozen men, and his heart sank. Too many, even for him. The rocks. He pointed to a cluster of boulders that offered some cover. They dismounted at a run, using the horses as shields until they reached the rocky outcrop. Ethan pushed Mary behind the largest boulder, then turned to face their pursuers. The first wave came fast and reckless. Ethan's Winchester spoke with deadly authority, dropping 3 men before they could close the distance. Mary fired steadily beside him, no longer the frightened girl, but a woman defending what she loved. "Ethan Cole!" A voice boomed across the battlefield. "Surrender the girl, and we might let you live." "Go to hell!" Ethan shouted back. More gunfire, more men falling, but they kept coming, and Ethan's ammunition was running low. He glanced at Mary, memorizing her face, dirt-smudged, fierce, beautiful. "Listen to me," he said during a lull. "When I tell you, take Star and run. Don't look back. We've been through this. I'm not leaving. Mary, together. Remember, whatever happens, We face it together. Before he could argue, a new sound cut through the air, hoofbeats from the east. More riders cresting the hill, and Ethan's heart sank. Reinforcements for their attackers. But then the newcomers opened fire on McGraw's men, not them. What the? Ethan squinted through the dust and recognized the lead rider. Rodriguez. The Mexican bandit and his men tore into McGraw's hired guns with savage efficiency. The battle turned into chaos. Three-way firefight with no clear sides.
Why is he helping us?
Mary asked, reloading with steady hands.
He's not. He's after the bounty too. Just doesn't want to share.
Ethan spotted the movement to their left. Down. They ducked as bullets shattered the rock above their heads. When Ethan looked up, Jack Dawson stood 20 feet away, his scarred face twisted with hate. Finally, Dawson snarled, "No more running. Cole!" They faced each other across the battleground, two gunfighters settling old scores. Time seemed to slow. Ethan saw Dawson's hand move, matched it with his own. Two shots rang out as one. Dawson staggered, looking down at the spreading red stain on his chest with surprise.
You're still faster?
He fell forward and lay still. But there was no time to savor the victory. McGraw himself had arrived, surrounded by more gunmen. The cattle baron sat his black stallion like a king surveying peasants. "Miss Whitfield," McGraw called out, "this foolishness has gone on long enough. Come with me now, and I'll spare your lover's life." "Never!" Mary shouted back. McGraw's face darkened. "Then you'll both die. Kill them." The final assault came from all directions. Ethan fought with desperate fury, but he knew they were overwhelmed. A bullet caught his shoulder, spinning him around. Another grazed his thigh. He could hear Mary screaming his name. Then she was in front of him, firing at an attacker who'd gotten too close. The man's bullet, meant for Ethan, caught her instead. She gasped, clutching her side as crimson bloomed across her shirt. "No!" Ethan caught her as she fell, rage giving him impossible strength. He became death incarnate, cutting down anyone who came near. But there were too many. Just as the last of his ammunition ran out, just as McGraw's remaining men closed in for the kill, thunder rolled across the cloudless sky. Not thunder, hoofbeats, dozens of them. The U.S. cavalry swept onto the battlefield like an avenging army. Blue uniforms and gleaming sabers scattered the outlaws. McGraw tried to flee but was ridden down by a sergeant who'd lost patience with frontier justice. "About time you boys showed up," Rodriguez called out cheerfully before disappearing into the Badlands with his surviving men. Captain Harrison, the troop's commander, dismounted near Ethan. "Got word there was a war brewing out here. Seems we arrived just in time." Ethan barely heard him. He was focused on Mary, pressing his bandana against her wound. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Don't you dare leave me now." Her eyes fluttered open. Did we win?" "Yeah, we won. McGraw's done. Dawson's dead. You're free."
"Good."
She touched his face with a trembling hand.
"Worth it? All worth it?"
"Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." But he could see how pale she was, how much blood. "Love you," she whispered. "No regrets." Her eyes closed, and Ethan's world shattered. The cavalry had a surgeon who worked with swift efficiency. The bullet had passed through cleanly, missing vital organs by inches. "She's lucky," he told Ethan. "Another inch to the left." They made camp there among the rocks, the soldiers standing guard while Mary fought for her life. Ethan never left her side, holding her hand, whispering prayers he hadn't said since Sarah died. On the second night, her fever broke. She opened clear eyes to find him haggard and unshaven beside her. "You look terrible," she murmured. He laughed through his tears, gathering her carefully into his arms.
"You scared 10 years off my life. Sorry, didn't mean to."
"Don't ever do that again. Taking bullets meant for me, that's not how this works."
"Isn't it?"
She managed a weak smile. I thought that's what people who love each other do. Protect each other. Captain Harrison approached as she grew stronger. Miss Whitfield, Mr. Cole, I need to know what happens next. McGraw's dead, killed resisting arrest. His men are scattered or captured. You're free to go wherever you wish.
There's a valley near Taos,
Mary said, looking at Ethan. I hear it's perfect for starting over. The paperwork on this mess will take months. Harrison continued. McGraw's estate, the bounties, the various crimes committed. You'll likely need to testify eventually. We'll be in Taos, Ethan said firmly. Building something worth having. The captain smiled. I'll make note of it. Oh, and Cole. That reputation of yours might want to consider that the man who killed Jack Dawson in a fair fight has earned some peace. The word will spread. People will think twice before coming after you. As the cavalry prepared to move out, taking their prisoners and McGraw's body, they left provisions and a pack horse. Least we can do, Harrison said. You two did more to clean up this territory than we have in months. Rodriguez appeared one last time as they were breaking camp, keeping a respectful distance. Señorita, you fight well for a preacher's daughter, and Cole, you're still the fastest gun I've seen. Perhaps our paths will cross again under better circumstances. Perhaps, Ethan allowed, but not too soon. The bandit laughed, saluting them before vanishing into the desert he knew so well. Mary stood carefully, still weak but determined. The rising sun painted the battlefield golden, and she could see the bodies had been removed, the blood washed away by soldiers' efforts. It looked almost peaceful.
So much death,
she said quietly. It's over now. They won't come for you again. For us, she corrected.
They won't come for us.
Ethan helped her mount Star, then swung up onto Whiskey. They sat for a moment, looking back at the place where their old lives had ended and their new one had begun. Any regrets? He asked. Mary thought of her father's cold house, of the cage she'd escaped, of all the pain and fear and violence that had brought her to this moment. Then she looked at Ethan, her protector, her teacher, her love, and smiled. Not a single one. They turned their horses north, toward New Mexico and the valley that waited. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, burning away the shadows of the past. Ahead lay the future uncertain, perhaps difficult, but theirs to build together. As they rode, Mary began to hum an old hymn her mother had loved, about grace and redemption and finding your way home. Ethan listened, remembering another woman who'd sung while she worked. And for the first time, the memory brought no pain, only gratitude for love found, lost, and found again. The frontier stretched endlessly before them, wild and dangerous and free. They rode into it side by side, no longer gunfighter and runaway, but simply Ethan and Mary, two souls who'd found each other in the wilderness and chosen to stay. Whatever came next, they'd face it as they'd learned to face everything together. The town of Cedar Falls sprawled before them like a promise of civilization after weeks in the wilderness. Mary's wound had healed to a pink scar, and they'd taken their time traveling north, letting her regain strength. Now, as they rode down the main street, she felt the weight of curious stares. People are watching, she murmured. Let them, Ethan replied, but his hand rested easy on his gun. They stopped at the general store for supplies. The proprietor, a thin man with nervous eyes, kept glancing between them as he filled their order. You folks passing through? He asked. Heading to Taos, Ethan said curtly. Long journey, especially for a lady. The man's gaze lingered on Mary's men's clothing, the gun at her hip. Don't see many women dressed like... My wife dresses how she pleases. The word slipped out before Ethan could stop it. Mary's breath caught. They weren't married, not legally, but hearing him claim her publicly sent warmth through her chest. The proprietor's eyes widened. Of course, sir. No offense meant. Outside, Mary touched Ethan's arm. Your wife. A flush crept up his neck.
Sorry, it just seemed easier than explaining.
I'm not complaining. She smiled, though folks might wonder about the lack of a ring. They were interrupted by a commotion down the street. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon, voices raised in anger. Through the mob! Mary glimpsed a young woman barely older than herself being dragged by her hair.
Thieving tramp.
A heavy-set man backhanded the girl, sending her sprawling.
Thought you could rob me. Please, I didn't take anything.
The girl tried to crawl away, but the crowd closed in. Mary started forward, but Ethan caught her arm.
Not our business.
They're going to kill her. Maybe she did steal. Maybe she deserves.
Nobody deserves a mob.
Mary's green eyes blazed.
You taught me to survive, to fight. What's the point if we don't use it to help others?
Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd been a sheltered minister's daughter just weeks ago, now ready to face down a lynch mob, and felt his heart swell with pride and fear. Together, he asked.
Always.
They pushed through the crowd. Ethan's reputation preceded him. Whispers of gunfighter and "that's Ethan Cole" rippled through the mob. People stepped back, creating space. "This doesn't concern you, mister." The heavy-set man snarled. He had the girl by the throat now. "She's a thief and worse." "Maybe so," Ethan said calmly. "But mob justice isn't justice. Let the law handle it." "Ain't no law here except what we make." "Then let's make it fair." Mary stepped forward, addressing the girl. "Did you steal from this man?" The girl's eyes were desperate.
No, ma'am, I refused his advances. He said if I wouldn't, he'd make me sorry.
The man's face reddened.
Lying witch. Easy way to prove it, Mary said. Search her. If she has your money, she's guilty. If not, you owe her an apology.
I don't owe no saloon trash nothing.
You owe everyone basic dignity.
Mary's voice carried the authority of her minister father, but with steel underneath.
Or are you afraid of what we won't find?
The crowd murmured. The man released the girl, who scrambled behind Mary. "Search her then," he spat. "When you find my money, she hangs." Mary helped the girl to her feet, checking her pockets gently. Nothing but a worn handkerchief and 2 pennies. "Seems you were mistaken," Ethan said, his hand casual on his gun. "I think that apology is in order." The man's face twisted.
"I don't apologize to—"
"You do today." Ethan's voice went cold. "Or we can discuss it further. Your choice." For a moment, violence hung in the air. Then the man muttered something that might have been sorry and pushed through the crowd. The mob dispersed, disappointed at being denied their entertainment. The girl clutched Mary's hands.
Thank you both. I'm Rebecca Stone. I don't know how to repay." "No need," Mary said. "Just stay safe."
"There's nowhere safe for women like me." Rebecca's eyes were old beyond her years. "Not in towns like this." Mary looked at Ethan, a question in her eyes. He sighed, recognizing that expression. "There's a mission in Santa Fe, Sisters of Mercy. They take in women needing a fresh start." Hope bloomed on Rebecca's face.
"Truly. I'll write you a letter of introduction."
Mary was already planning.
"Can you get to Santa Fe?"
"I'll find a way. I'll do anything for a real chance." They left Rebecca with the letter and enough money for stage fare, despite her protests. As they rode out of Cedar Falls, Ethan shook his head. "You can't save everyone, Mary." "I'm not trying to, but I couldn't ride past someone who needed help." She smiled at him. "Sound familiar?" That was different. Was it a gunfighter who'd sworn off caring, finding someone in trouble by a river? She reached over to take his hand.
"Maybe that's what love does, makes us better than we thought we could be."
They camped that night in a grove of aspens, their leaves whispering secrets in the wind. As they sat by the fire, Ethan seemed unusually quiet. "What's troubling you?" Mary asked. "That word I used earlier, wife." He stared into the flames. Sarah and I were married in a little church in Amarillo. White dress, flowers, the whole thing. It was the happiest day of my life." Mary waited, sensing more. "I know things are different now. We can't just walk into a church, not with our history. But you deserve." He struggled for words. "You deserve something more than just traveling with a gunfighter. Something proper." "Proper?" Mary laughed. "I gave up proper when I ran away in my nightgown. When I learned to shoot. When I chose love over safety." She moved to sit beside him. "I don't need a white dress or flowers. Ethan, I just need you. There are traveling preachers, judges in some towns who don't ask questions. Is that what you want?" He turned to face her fully. "I want to know you're mine in every way that matters. Legal, spiritual, however you need it to be. I want the right to call you my wife without lying." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking." He pulled something from his pocket, a simple silver ring. "Bought this in Cedar Falls while you were helping Rebecca. It's not much." "It's perfect." She held out her hand, which trembled only slightly. "Yes, Ethan, yes to everything." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it caught the firelight like a promise. When he kissed her, it was different than before, deeper, full of commitment that went beyond words. "There's a judge in Los Alamos," he said when they broke apart. 2 days' ride. He's known for not asking too many questions. Then we go to Los Alamos." They held each other as the fire burned low, planning a future that seemed impossibly bright after so much darkness. But some shadows weren't done with them yet. The next morning brought riders on their back trail. Not many, too, maybe 3, but following steady. "Trouble?" Mary asked, checking her gun. "Maybe, or maybe just travelers heading the same way." But Ethan's eyes said different. They pushed harder, taking rougher trails, doubling back. The riders stayed with them. As they entered a narrow valley, Ethan finally called a halt. "Show yourselves," he shouted. "I'm done playing games." 3 men emerged from cover, not hired guns. Their clothes were too fine, their bearing too official. Mr. Cole. Miss Whitfield. The leader, a man with silver temples and a marshal's badge, stepped forward. "I'm Federal Marshal Thomas Brennan. We need to talk." "About what?" Ethan's hand stayed near his gun. "About the deaths of Silas McGraw and Jack Dawson. About the considerable bounty on Miss Whitfield that was never formally resolved. About whether you two are criminals or heroes." Brennan smiled slightly. "I'd prefer to discuss this peacefully, but that's up to you." Mary felt her dreams of Los Alamos slipping away, but she straightened her spine, lifted her chin. "We'll talk, but know this. Marshal, everything we did was in self-defense. I won't go back to being someone's property." "I wouldn't expect you to, ma'am. Truth is, you've done the territory a service, but there are formalities, paperwork. The law needs its due." Ethan looked at Mary, saw the same determination that had carried her this far. "All right, Marshal, let's talk. But if this is some trick—" "No tricks. You have my word." Brennan gestured to his men to lower their weapons. "Fact is, Miss Whitfield's father has been raising quite a fuss. Says his daughter was kidnapped by a notorious gunman. The story needs to be set straight. Officially." "My father," Mary said bitterly. "Of course." "He's in Santa Fe demanding justice. Thought you should know before you get there?" The weight of the past settled on Mary's shoulders. She'd thought herself free, but family chains were harder to break than iron ones. She looked at the ring on her finger, then at Ethan. "Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," he confirmed. "Always." As they followed Marshal Brennan north, Mary thought about justice and freedom, about the price of choosing your own path. The town she'd fled seemed a lifetime ago, but its shadows still reached for her. But she was different now, stronger, and she had something she'd never had before, someone who'd stand with her against any storm. The road to Los Alamos would have to wait. First came the reckoning with her past. But after that, the future beckoned like sunrise after the longest night. She touched the gun at her hip, the ring on her finger, both symbols of who she'd become. Minister's daughter, runaway, survivor, fighter, lover, she was all of these and more. And she was ready for whatever came next. The courthouse in Santa Fe stood like a monument to civilization in the wild territory, its adobe walls baking under the afternoon sun. Mary adjusted her new dress. Marshal Brennan had insisted she look respectable for the hearing, but kept her gun belt underneath. Some habits died hard. "You ready for this?" Ethan asked, standing beside her on the steps, as ready as one can be to face the past. She touched the silver ring on her finger, drawing strength from it. "Whatever happens, we've come too far to turn back now." Inside, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the infamous Ethan Cole and the runaway minister's daughter, but it was the figure in the front row that made Mary's steps falter. Reverend Josiah Whitfield sat rigid as a tombstone, his face carved from judgment and disappointment. He didn't look at his daughter, keeping his eyes fixed on the judge's bench as if seeking divine intervention. Judge Samuel Morrison, a man known for his fairness, if not his patience, called the hearing to order. "We're here to settle the matter of the deaths of Silas McGraw and various associates, and to determine if any charges should be filed against Mr. Ethan Cole and Miss Mary Whitfield." "My daughter," Reverend Whitfield stood abruptly, "was kidnapped by this gunman, led astray from her Christian duty." "You'll have your turn to speak, Reverend." Judge Morrison said firmly, "Sit down." Marshal Brennan presented the facts methodically. The forced engagement to McGraw, Mary's flight, the pursuit by hired guns, the final battle where McGraw died resisting federal officers. By all accounts, Brennan concluded, Mr. Cole and Miss Whitfield acted in self-defense against unlawful attempts on their lives. McGraw was operating outside the law, using his wealth to subvert justice. "Lies," Reverend Whitfield erupted. "Mr. McGraw was a respected member of our community. He offered to save our church, to provide for my daughter." "To buy me," Mary said quietly, standing, like cattle at auction. The courtroom stirred. Judge Morrison gestured for her to continue. "Your Honor, my father means well, but his desperation blinded him. Silas McGraw was known for his cruelty. His first wife died under mysterious circumstances. Servants disappeared from his ranch. When I refused his proposal, he put a bounty on my head." She lifted her chin. "Mr. Cole saved my life, protected me when my own father wouldn't." "You were promised." Reverend Whitfield's face had gone purple. "I gave my word before God." "Your word, not mine." Mary faced him directly for the first time. "You taught me that God gave us free will. Father, or does that only apply to men?" The Reverend sputtered, but Judge Morrison cut him off. "Miss Whitfield, you're of legal age to make your own choices. The question before this court is whether any laws were broken in the pursuit of those choices." A new voice spoke from the back. "If I may, Your Honor." Everyone turned to see a distinguished woman in traveling clothes. She walked forward with quiet authority. "I'm Catherine McGraw's sister, Elizabeth Thornton. I've traveled from Denver to set the record straight about my former brother-in-law." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Judge Morrison nodded for her to continue. "My sister didn't fall down any stairs. She lived in fear every day of her marriage. I have letters." She produced a bundle of papers, documenting years of abuse. I begged her to leave, but she said the law wouldn't help her. She was property, just like Miss Whitfield would have been. The courtroom fell silent. Elizabeth looked directly at Mary. "You did what my sister couldn't. You ran, you fought, you survived. God bless you for it." Judge Morrison reviewed the letters, his expression darkening. "Finally." He looked up. "Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Cole and Miss Whitfield acted in justified self-defense. No charges will be filed. Furthermore, any claims on Miss Whitfield's person or freedom are hereby dissolved. The gavel came down with finality. Reverend Whitfield sagged in his seat. For the first time, he looked old, defeated. Mary felt her anger drain away, replaced by pity. "Father," she said softly, approaching him. "I know you thought you were doing right, but selling your daughter to save a building, that's not God's way." "I've lost everything," he whispered. "The church, my reputation, my daughter." "You haven't lost me. I'm just not yours to control anymore." She glanced at Ethan. "I'm getting married, father, to a good man who sees me as a person, not property. You can be part of that life, or you can cling to your pride. Your choice." Outside the courthouse, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Elizabeth Thornton approached them. "Thank you," she said simply, "for finishing what Catherine couldn't." "I'm sorry about your sister," Mary replied. "She's at peace now, and McGraw can't hurt anyone else." Elizabeth smiled sadly. "Be happy, both of you. It's what Catherine would have wanted." As she walked away, Ethan pulled Mary close. "You all right?" "Better than all right. I'm free, truly free." She looked up at him. "So, about that judge in Los Alamos." He grinned. "Still want to marry this old gunfighter?" More than ever. They were married 3 days later in a small adobe chapel outside Los Alamos. Marshal Brennan stood as witness, having decided they were good folks worth helping. Mary wore a simple blue dress and wildflowers in her hair. Ethan had shaved and found a clean shirt, looking younger than he had in years. "Do you, Ethan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the traveling preacher asked. "I do." His voice was strong, certain. "Do you, Mary, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." No hesitation, no doubt. "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, I pronounce you husband and wife." When Ethan kissed her, Mary felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was Mary Cole now, choosing her own path, her own name, her own future. They spent their wedding night in a small inn, finally allowing themselves the intimacy they'd both craved and resisted for so long. In Ethan's arms, Mary discovered that love could be gentle and fierce, tender and passionate. They came together like two halves of a whole, healing each other's wounds with whispered words and soft touches. Later, as they lay entwined, Ethan traced the scar on her side from the bullet she'd taken for him. "My brave girl," he murmured. "Your wife," she corrected, smiling. "Your brave wife." "My brave, beautiful, stubborn wife." He kissed her forehead. "What have I gotten myself into? A lifetime of adventure, I suspect. I can live with that." They found their valley a week later, just as Ethan had described it. Green grass, clear water, mountains standing guard on all sides. The perfect place to build something lasting. "It's beautiful," Mary breathed. "It's home," Ethan said simply. They started with a simple camp, then slowly began construction on their adobe house. Ethan taught Mary construction while she taught him to laugh again. They worked side by side, building not just walls but a life together. Word came occasionally from the outside world. Rebecca Stone had made it to Santa Fe, was thriving with the sisters. Reverend Whitfield had lost his church but found work as a traveling preacher, perhaps learning humility on the road. Rodriguez had been spotted in Mexico, still charming and dangerous. But mostly, the world left them alone. Ethan's reputation and the remote valley provided all the protection they needed. They raised horses, grew vegetables, and slowly healed from their wounds, both physical and emotional. On their first Christmas together, snow blanketing their valley in pristine white, Mary stood in the doorway of their nearly complete home. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist.
Any regrets?
He asked, as he had once before. Only one, she said. He tensed. What? That we can't live this life twice. She turned in his arms.
I love you, Ethan Cole. Thank you for saving me.
You saved me right back. He rested his forehead against hers.
That scared girl I found by the river is gone, Mary finished. But she led me to you, so I'm grateful to her.
As the sun set over their valley, painting the snow-capped peaks rose gold, they stood together in the doorway of their home. The frontier had tested them, shaped them, nearly broken them, but they'd survived. And more than that, they'd found love in the most unlikely place. The Wild West was still dangerous, still unpredictable. But here in their valley, two souls who'd been shattered by life had built something whole and strong and beautiful. The girl who'd shivered by the river had become a woman of strength and courage. The gunfighter who'd wrapped her in his protection had found peace at last. And in the vast, untamed territory of New Mexico, their love stood as proof that sometimes, against all odds, people find exactly where they belong. The desert wind sang through the valley, carrying the scent of sage and pine and possibility. And in their adobe house, warm with fire and love, Ethan and Mary Cole began their greatest adventure of all, a life together. Chosen freely, defended fiercely, and cherished always. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please comment below and share your thoughts about Ethan and Mary's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of courage and romance on the frontier, please subscribe to Wild West Night channel. Hit that like button, and don't forget to click the hype button to help more listeners discover this story. Your support means everything until next time. Partners.